code, talk to him. He's the one who's actually been involved. He's actually very happy with the fact that it used to be really horribly ugly. It used to be too many lines of code. It really didn't work very well. And they've actually removed lines. They've cleaned stuff up. I mean, the reason for a while Microsoft was the biggest single contributor was that it was all cleanups. I mean, it wasn't like new lines of code.
So
it
they
was
put
actually,
in ugly code, then they cleaned it so
yes,
that it became
and they did so many cleanups that it finally turned into reasonable code. But there was so much of that cleanup that they got counted as the most productive.
That's ironic.
It's fun, but I mean, that's actually most of the changes we do are not writing new and exciting code. Most of the changes we do are changing and improving code. So I mean, it just happened. This is an extreme case of that.
How many people can do your work?
The big issue is actually trust. I mean, there is a certain amount of technical knowledge. On a technical knowledge scale, there's probably a few tens of people who really know pretty much. I mean, they know the kernel well enough that they could do my work.
So the distribution system is also has a pyramid. I mean,
it does. I mean, there are certain levels of connectedness, right? It is a network, but some people are better networked and are more centrally networked.
Some people has to decide.
Yeah, and it's very much the case that the connectedness itself is a big issue. The reason I'm an effective maintainer and manager is not because I'm technically superior to everybody else in the world. I mean, I'd like to think I am, right? But that's not the fundamental reason. The fundamental reason is just that people trust me. They don't necessarily trust me to always make the right decision, but they know how I work. They've seen me work for 20 years. So they trust me the way you might trust somebody you've seen for a long time. You trust them not to be crazy, right? And you trust them that if they make the wrong mistake, if I make a bad decision, they know that, okay, I will say, okay, that was bad. I will undo that.
That's why maybe nobody did a fork.
I mean, no, forks always happen, but
yeah,
I think one of the
kernel.
reasons, even in the kernel, yeah. I mean, the thing is, forks. The nice thing about the kernel forks have been we've been pretty friendly about forking. There've been certain projects that when the project forks, it becomes a big fight between the two forks. And in the kernel, we seldom had that. Even the Android fork, which has been like the biggest fight we've ever had, it's not like we hate the Google guys. No. I mean, the Android fork is about as unfriendly as we can get. And we're talking about saying, hey, you were right. Let's just pull in your code. And the thing is, if you don't get unfriendly about fork, if you say it's okay for you to try your own thing, and we don't believe it's the right thing, but if you prove that it's working really well, hey, you won. We'll take your code. So that's, I think, the biggest change between Linux and some other open source project. And actually, coming back to your earlier question about the whole having a central working group that controls the project, one of the things that makes me not like that model is that if you have 9 people who are random number, you have a number of people who just try to control the project, and then somebody else on the outside is unhappy and tries to take it in a different direction, you get all this political friction. You get this nasty argumentation about who's right and who's wrong, and after you've argued that for a few months, the two groups really hate each other, right? And then the fork has turned from a technical fork into a political and psychological and
sociological
argument. Yes, and that's bad. And in the Linux community, we've always had forks. I mean, literally, all the distributions have always made their own kernels. These days, most of the distributions try to minimize their differences to mainline, but that's mainly because the kernel is kind of stable, and they don't see the kernel as the point that they want to
It's a
specialize
huge
in.
work to
It's
develop their own.
it's work and not a lot of payback. So, but you go back 10 years, all the major distributions maintained their big forks, but people didn't think of them as forks in the traditional sense because we didn't argue about it. It was like, that's good. We'll take the parts that work for you. And that's really nice because forks is how new development gets done. You have some crazy person who comes up with a new idea and some way of doing things better, and everybody else laughs at him and says, "You're just cuckoo," right? And it turns out they were right, and they could go off and do their own thing, and then they say, "Hey, look, I was right. Here are the numbers. I am 10 times faster than you are, and I do it in less code." And everybody else says, "Wow." And if you are friendly with them, you say, "Wow, okay, we laughed at you, but you were right." And you merge it back in. And then it's a good thing to fork. So forks are not bad. The reason people think forks are bad is because, like the traditional Unix forks, where you couldn't merge back in because people would then hide the actual code, right? So then forks turn into competition between different companies that essentially end up re-implementing the same things over and over and over again because they're not really helping each other. They're just trying to be different. So,
just one question more I need to do is about patents.
But go ahead. Yeah, I don't know what to say about patents. They're bad.
Yeah, but it's getting crazy. I mean, they are buying Kodak because of what are they gonna patent?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, everybody hates patents. That's the sad part. I mean, literally everybody hates patents. Even the big companies that are spending, or especially the big companies that
maybe
are
not the lawyers.
The lawyers don't hate it. Yeah, you're right. The lawyers actually like the fact that it's a good revenue stream. Well, even lawyers often, probably, I suspect, deep down, they think it's a racket, but it's a racket that makes them money. So there's like the patent trolls that take advantage of the situation. I don't think they really like the patents. It's just that if you have a broken system where you can try to take advantage of the system, people will do that. And so I don't think the patent trolls are the problem. I think that the companies that troll with patents are a symptom of the fact that the patent system is broken.
Where is it going?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Do you really think that all the people deep down dislike patents?